I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money.
Someone reminded me I once said, greed is good.
40 fake newsmen! Where you at? Where you at? I'm coming for you, doing it right now! The night's still early! Where you at?
It was Colby's contention that his negotiation for a title shot in the big Madison Square Garden card fell apart because he was offered a basic challenger's fee, and that he wasn't being adequately compensated for the promotional work he put in over the last couple years. When he made his case, it was hard to argue with him.
I'm ready to fight. I was ready to fight, but, the UFC came to me with a basic challenger's offer, and, I'm a champion, and I put my life on the line for this company. I accepted to fight for this title in Brazil again after I had death threats and favelas wanting my head out in Brazil, and I still was willing to go put my life on the line for this company. And look at what I've done in this sport. I went to the White House. I have a relationship with the First Family and the Trumps. I've won every fight I've won. I have a world title, and they still want to treat me like crap. They still want to not give me any room to negotiate and work.
When you listen to Dana offer his side of the story, it didn't contradict anything Colby said.
Colby Covington can say whatever he wants. We make fights for a living. That's what we do. We go after guys. We say, this is next. This is the date. Do you want the fight? Right? And obviously, he wanted more money to fight Usman.
Colby fought Dos Anjos for an interim belt in June 2018. But why? Well, no real reason. Outside promotion. Woodley had been out of the cage 8 months when RDA Colby was announced for an interim belt. But Woodley had just fought 4 title fights in the space of 12 months. He then had shoulder surgery, but when this fight was announced, Woodley expected to be ready to return 1 month after Dos Anjos versus Colby. So as I said, no real reason outside fight promotion. UFC wanted to add a little shine to their event, so they made an interim belt. But they did do that. They promoted it as a title fight, they made it a 5-rounder, and they awarded Colby a belt. Six weeks after Colby won the interim title, Dana announced Woodley versus Till for the actual belt. Colby would be stripped as soon as that bout began. He was unable to make the date himself because he had nasal surgery scheduled.
Unfortunately, I had nasal sinuplasty surgery scheduled, so...
He expected to be able to return 2 to 3 months after Woodley versus Till.
Given the surgery, I could probably return in November, December.
So Colby was basically stripped for exactly the same reason he got his interim title in the first place. He got the belt because Woodley needed an extra month. And now here he was losing it because he needed an extra couple months. I mean, it is a ruthless fucking business sometimes. They are not waiting around for anyone. But not only did he miss that shot, he again got fucked when the UFC bizarrely gave Usman a next shot in March, which completely soured the relationship between Colby and the UFC. Covington went to fucking war over this, and the bad luck continued. Usman smashed Woodley, but immediately went into surgery for a double hernia, again leaving Colby at a loose end.
I was begging Dana White, let's get this going as soon as possible, the sooner the better. But, Snoozman's out there faking injuries, he's saying, he's got all these different injury excuses. Oh, my hand, my knee, my hernia, he's just trying to delay the inevitable. It's that I'm going to take everything he worked for and he's going to be, forgotten.
A year after his win over RDA, he stepped in on short notice to fight Robbie Lawler. This was basically a demand by the UFC to save the card. Finally, after demolishing Lawler, Colby had his sights firmly and deservedly set in a title fight. But as I said, he got offered a basic challenger's rate. Naturally, he wanted to negotiate, but the UFC just moved on to Masvidal instead. So what happened here? The UFC got exactly what they wanted out of the whole thing. They hyped an event with a title fight, but then they stripped Colby as soon as it no longer suited them, basically confirming how meaningless it was all along. Okay, fine. But now Colby wants to reap some rewards. He wants a little compensation. And it's like, nah, fuck yourself. We got everything we wanted out of this little interim fiasco. You get nothing. Colby had a lot to complain about. He was stripped, passed over twice, and now this basic challenger's offer was just a slap in the fucking face. I've always had the feeling that Dana interprets he didn't take the fight on our exact terms as he's turning down fights, and he's then content to go talking shit in public with that exact narrative, practically calling a fighter a pussy. And I think that's what happened here.
We went back and forth. This is the second time he's done it. He had a fight in Dallas, too. So we said, if you don't want to fight Usman, then we'll give you Tyron Woodley. He turned down Tyron Woodley, too. You either want to fight or you don't. We can, when Colby Covington's ready to fight, he'll let us know.
Colby mentioned several times that he was standing up for the fighters. And in my view, he was fighting a good fight here. He was absolutely right to dig his heels in.
Well, UFC is just, they're playing a game that's not fair. And really, I'm just standing up for all the fighters. And there was no negotiation. They came and ran at me and they said, here, take this or leave it and we'll pass it on to the next person. So, they need to make this right.
Eventually, they got a deal done. Colby wasn't totally satisfied, but he said they met in the middle.
We were able to meet somewhat in the middle, so, I wouldn't say I'm happy with it, but we're closer to where we were before, where we first started at that basic challenger offer is just, it's pitiful, you don't offer the biggest name in this division, this pitiful offer,
So Colby had stuck to his guns, come to terms with an organization that seemed content to fuck him, and on October 1st, the fight was finally announced. And so naturally, this is where you'd expect this video to end. I mean, they've come to terms here. The fight is on. What's left to argue about? But this is actually where it gets interesting. The fight announcement did very little to satisfy Colby. He wasn't trying to mend fences or forget the difficult journey that led to that point. He famously threatened to slap Dana with the belt.
I can tell you who's not wrapping around my waist, and that will not be Dana White. If he tries to wrap that belt around my waist, I'm going to take the belt from him and slap him in the face with it.
Now, to continue antagonizing Dana at this point just seems strange and inadvisable. He has his title shot on terms that he felt were not ideal but were acceptable. This is beyond the point where conflict with the UFC is at all advantageous for Colby, and it could easily turn out to be costly. From here on out, Colby seemed to be on a crusade, and his whole attitude was that of a man going all in on himself. Rather than mending fences, he was totally open about the fact that should he win, the ball would be in his court, and he was not going to make it easy for the UFC. He was essentially telling Dana, in no uncertain terms, if I win that belt, you're going to pay for all that fuckery over the last 12 months.
What's great about this is an opportunity for me to really just shove it up the UFC's ass and say, fuck you guys. I don't give a fuck about you guys. Now you have to come to me. So you're going to be calling me after December 14th, begging to get me back in there. And if you don't come right next time, then, I don't need to fight again, man. I already have enough money in my bank account where I don't have to ever fight or do anything ever again, man.
Obviously, the implication here is that if Colby takes the belt, he's calling his shots. He's got the power, and he intended to wield it like a fucking tyrant. The other side of that, if he loses, he's got jack shit to bargain with, and the UFC might not take too kindly to what turn out to be empty threats. Colby took every opportunity to exacerbate this situation by shredding Dana White in the media.
Do you guys honestly believe anything that Dana White says anymore to the media?
No comment.
Dana White needs to get his brain checked because he might have CTE if he's making up lies like that. There's a difference between me and Dana White, and that's truth and lies. So,
with almost every interview, Colby's situation with the company became more and more precarious. And by the way, this is after he confronted Dana in a casino, after he launched the most vicious verbal attacks anyone has ever launched on Dana.
Uncle Fester, he's just mad that he saw one of his side chicks sweating me on Instagram. So, this is his way of trying to get back at me. It's not my fault that I'm raw American Steel and twisted sex appeal. It's not my fault that Uncle Fester's fat and he's off the HGH right now. He's got those little saggy titties going. So, we all know that they don't have balls. They won't release me. They're too scared. They got little baby nuts. Dana can't even confront people to his face. He's talking shit to all these people in the media, talking shit to Oscar De La Hoya, a guy who would dust him off the mat with his shoes poked up in his little hooker's dress and everything. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't take him one round for De La Hoya to dust Uncle Fester. But I'm standing my ground, man. I'm standing up for all the fighters that don't have a fucking platform that can't stand up against the UFC and have to take everything the UFC gives them, all the shit the UFC gives them, fucks all the fighters on the pay, you know, and just expects you to do things on the drop of a dime when they want it. You know, all these fighters are yes men. I'm not a yes man, Jason.
Dana, what's up, bro? How you doing? How you doing? I just want an explanation why I'm not fighting for the belt this weekend.
Stop filming.
Come on, bro.
Stop filming.
I want an explanation, man.
Gambling. You too. Dreadlock, dude.
But most importantly, this is after Colby already has the fight he wants. So there's no real upside to dragging this out. But he felt, and rightly so, that he had not been treated fairly, that he had to fight the UFC every step of the way. To his credit, he was sticking to his guns when there was no longer an incentive to do so. Whether or not it was simply a clashing of egos, this was a good fight. And Dana was clearly frustrated. Colby was getting under his skin.
He says, no way he's letting you wrap the belt around him. If you do, he's going to smack you in the head with it. What's your comments on that?
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. He's a big mouth fucking idiot.
One thing I want to comment on here is just how much satisfaction the reporter got out of saying right to Dana's face, Colby said he's going to smack you over the head. He really emphasizes the smack.
He says, no way he's letting you wrap the belt around him. If you do, he's going to smack you in the head with it.
Smack. Hey, Dana, Colby said he's going to smack you with the belt. Then he's going to bash you over the head with a frying pan. He's going to molly-wop the fuck out of your ass. Can you comment on that, please? Can we get a quote?
Good luck with that.
Like, Dana's hostility here might actually be aimed at the reporter. You know, those little things, they don't go unnoticed. Like, the reporter might as well have said, hey, Dana, Colby said he's going to smack you in the head, you piece of shit. Anyway, the dispute with the UFC was the most prominent of all Colby's beefs in the lead up to the fight. He continued to talk shit. And while I'm sure Dana will get over being called Uncle Fester, Colby straight up called out the UFC for mistreating its fighters. This is the type of shit that could tarnish the company's image, and they have had to answer questions about that before.
It's a ruthless business, and the UFC brand, they don't care about the fighters. You're just a number, and it's just on to the next guy. So
a lot of the fighters, they're happy to get their little UFC Reebok fight kits and wear it to Publix or Walmart.
Oh, I'm a UFC fighter, blah, blah, blah.
But they're willing to get their brains bashed in for $10,000. So, you know, people should thank me because I'm trying to stand up for all the fighters that don't have a voice or a platform.
His threats also escalated. He was now threatening to leave the UFC altogether. And he sounded totally serious.
it really just depends on how the UFC wants to treat me. You know, it's been a two-way street of how we've been treated. They treat me like so I treat them like you know. If they want to start treating me good, I'll start treating them good. If they don't start paying me my worth and what I deserve, then, you know, I can go to WWE. The offers are been talked about. You know, I'll make more money outside the UFC, and they know that. That's why they were never willing to release me before. I was begging for my release a year ago.
And on fight week, he doubled down on Dana not putting a belt on him.
Everybody knows I ain't got nothing to say to Uncle Fester. And he's not going to wrap that belt around my waist on Saturday night, I can promise you that. It was tradition until they did the Broken Mediocre Fighter Championship last weekend in New York, and they gave away that Bernie Sanders participation trophy, and they let The Rock put it on Journeyman George. So I want Candace Owens to put it around my waist on Saturday night.
Now, politics aside, what a lame idea. Candace Owens? Jorge Masvidal had Roberto Duran walk him out. Then he had The Rock put the belt on. Colby's like, yeah, that's nice, but I'm gonna have Ben Shapiro walk me out. Candace Owens can wrap the belt around me, and myself and Jordan Peterson be debunking a fucking wage gap in a post-fight press conference. I mean, surely he could have picked someone cooler. Could he not get one of them wrestlers? You know, Kurt Angle? Even Chael Sonnen? I mean, that'd be good. Although I did watch his interview with Candace, and to be fair, I think they should get married. Anyway, his disdain for Dana and dissatisfaction with the organization had become so clear, I heard multiple journalists speculate that if Colby lost, he might get cut. If he won, he'd have the belt, he'd have some leverage, and everything indicated that he'd be a nightmare to deal with. In the article by Damon Martin, Dan Lambert told the story of how Colby was rejecting fights very early in his career. And in order to get into the UFC, he went around Dan, who thought he was too green. So these were not idle threats coming from Colby. He could be very stubborn and very difficult to deal with. And he appeared totally committed to the idea that in future negotiations, the UFC would pay for past grievances. So even if they didn't cut him, now knowing what a pain in the fucking ass Colby would be as champion, if he lost at UFC 245, they might make his road back to the belt an especially difficult one. In that case, this whole personal vendetta, all his threats and vicious insults, might just come back and bite him in the fucking ass.